do you get higher SAT scores if you pay kids for getting high SAT scores? Do kids do better in school if you pay parents for their kids' attendance records? Do kids do better in school if you pay teachers based on how well kids do on the standardized tests? Is this happening in Canada? Not yet? Well, it's happening in the US, and it's been an incredible success. State after state, standardized test scores have just gone through the roof when you start incentivizing teachers to get their kids to do well on standardized tests. It really works, he said sarcastically, because it works for one of two reasons. One is worse than the other. It works either because teachers simply teach kids what they have to know to do well on the test. You're familiar with this, teaching to the test. And of course, what happens when you teach to the test is that the test stops being an indicator of what you actually care about, which is how much the kids are learning. All you know is how much they're learning of what has to be on the test. So that's bad, but it's not the worst. What's worse is that teachers cheat. They change kids' answers. They get the bubble sheets, they erase the mistakes, and they substitute the correct answers. There's a huge scandal in Georgia. It was a few rotten apples. What was the number? About 180? Just a few rotten apples. It wouldn't occur to anyone that maybe there was a problem with the barrel if 180 teachers were cheating, and I'm sure they haven't found all of them. It's now been surfaced in Pennsylvania. It has surfaced in New York, and it's just, in my view, is that it will surface wherever people look, if they look carefully enough. And there are very subtle ways of determining this. You can look at patterns of erasures on the bubble sheets and compute a statistical model of how often you will have answers change from right to wrong and how often you will have answers change from wrong to right. So you're not literally looking over their teachers' shoulders as they change answers, but you're making powerful statistical arguments that this pattern of erasures, sort of like DNA analysis, this pattern of erasures could occur by chance once in 2 billion times or something like that. And this kind of evidence has actually gotten some teachers to fess up to the fact that they have in fact systematically changed student answers. So I guess America's school children are much smarter now than they were 10 years ago because they are doing ever so much better on their standardized tests. So to the extent that we preserve an understanding that there are different ways in which people can think about their responsibilities and obligations to one another, then we can ask, well, what is the proper place of market pricing? What is the proper place for incentives? And we can judge that those things have their place, but that place isn't every place. But that depends critically on the viability and vibrancy of these alternatives to market pricing that we can look to and ask, maybe this should be done communally, maybe this should be done based on reciprocity and not based on contract. And the more we chip away at these other modes of relating to one another, the harder it will be for us to imagine that there is any way to solve problems aside from coming up with ways to set market prices.